The sun blazed like a golden fire over Chongan, the heart of the Tang Empire, where the world seemed to collide in a whirlwind of colors, sounds, and dreams. Zahra stood frozen at the edge of the city's grand market, her heart pounding like a drum in her chest. She was a long way from home, her Swahili coastal village, where waves kissed the shore and her mother's laughter echoed under starlit skies. Here, in this strange, dazzling city, she felt like a single grain of sand in a vast desert. Her dark skin, gleaming like polished ebony, and her vibrant orange and blue robes drew stares from every corner. Merchants in silk tunics whispered, children pointed, and even the horses seemed to snort in curiosity. Zahra clutched the edge of her head wrap, her fingers trembling, but her chin lifted high. She wasn't here to shrink. She was here to shine. Zahra, barely 19, had crossed deserts and seas with her father, a merchant whose weathered hands carried treasures from their homeland. Ivory carved smoother than moonlight, spices that burned the tongue, and shells that whispered of the ocean. They'd traveled the Silk Road for months, chasing tales of Chongan's riches, palaces of jade, streets paved with dreams, and an emperor who welcomed the world's wonders. But now, standing in the chaos of the market, Zahra felt a pang of loneliness. Her father was busy haggling over a crate of frankincense, his voice rising above the clatter of carts and the shouts of vendors selling everything from peaches to peacock feathers. She was alone in this sea of strangers, her heart aching for the familiar rhythm of her village's drums. Yet, something about Chongan sparked a fire in her. The city pulsed with life. Towering pagodas stretched toward the sky, their curved roofs glinting like dragon scales. Silk banners fluttered in the breeze, painted with flowers and clouds. The air smelled of roasted chestnuts, incense, and the sharp tang of horse sweat. Everywhere she looked, there was movement. Nobles in flowing robes, monks chanting softly, and foreign traders like her, their faces as varied as the goods they carried. Zahra's eyes sparkled with wonder. This was a place where anything could happen, where a girl from a faraway shore might carve her name into history. As she wandered deeper into the market, her sandaled feet kicking up dust, she overheard a group of men huddled near a tea stall. Their voices were low, excited, like they were sharing a secret. "The Emperor's tournament," one said, his beard wagging as he spoke. "They say Prince Li Wei himself will choose the champion, a warrior to guard the empire from those northern raiders." Another man laughed, slamming his fist on a table. "No one's good enough for the prince. He's picky, that one. Young but sharp as a blade." Zahra's heart skipped. A tournament? Prince? Her mind raced back to her village, where she'd learned to dance with a spear under the blazing sun. Her brother had taught her, his grin wide as he spun his own spear, showing her how to weave and strike like the wind. "You're fierce, Zahra," he'd said, ruffling her braids. "Fiercer than any storm." She'd practiced until her hands bled, until her movements were a blur of grace and power. Back home, she was a warrior in her own right, even if the elders shook their heads at a girl wielding a spear. But here in Chongan, could she dare to show the world what she could do? The idea hit her like a lightning bolt. The tournament was her chance. Not just to prove herself, but to make her father proud, to honor her mother's memory, to show that a girl from a distant land could stand tall among warriors. But there was a problem. The men's talk made it clear. Only men could enter the tournament. Zahra's jaw tightened. She wasn't one to back down from a challenge. She'd faced worse. Sandstorms, bandits, the sneers of traders who thought her father mad for bringing a daughter on such a journey. If the rules wouldn't let her in as a girl, she'd find another way. That night, in the cramped inn where she and her father stayed, Zahra made her plan. The room smelled of damp wood and sesame oil, and the flicker of a single lantern cast shadows on the walls. Her father snored softly on his mat, exhausted from the day's trades. Zahra knelt by her small bundle of belongings, her hands steady but her heart racing. She pulled out a plain brown tunic, one her father had bought for her brother before he'd stayed behind in their village. She unwound her colorful head wrap, letting her tight braids spill free, then tucked them under a simple cap. In the dim light, she practiced lowering her voice, standing straighter, moving like the boys she'd watched in the market. She became Zaria, a young warrior from a distant land, come to test his strength. The next morning, Zahra slipped out before dawn, her spear strapped to her back, the weight of it familiar and comforting. Her father thought she was off to explore the city, but she was headed to the tournament grounds, a wide field outside Chongan's walls where banners snapped in the wind and the air buzzed with excitement. Her stomach twisted with nerves, but her eyes burned with determination. She could feel her mother's spirit watching, her voice whispering, "Be brave, my heart." Zahra's fingers tightened around her spear. She wasn't just fighting for herself. She was fighting for every girl who'd been told she couldn't, for every dream that had been laughed at, for every star she'd wished on back home. The tournament grounds were a riot of noise and color. Warriors from across the empire strutted like proud roosters, their armor clanking, their swords gleaming. Some were broad as oxen, others lean and quick, their eyes sharp with hunger for glory. Spectators crowded the edges, waving fans and shouting bets. Zahra, as Zaria, kept her head low, her cap pulled tight. She registered with a gruff official, muttering her false name and claiming she was a trader's son from the west. The man barely glanced at her, waving her through with a grunt. Her heart soared, she was in. As she waited for her turn, Zahra's eyes scanned the crowd, landing on a young man in a jade green robe, standing apart from the chaos. His face was calm, almost too calm, like a still pond hiding deep currents. His hair was tied back with a silk cord, and his eyes, dark and thoughtful, seemed to see everything. Whispers rippled around her. "That's Prince Li Wei, the emperor's youngest." Zahra's breath caught. He was younger than she'd expected, maybe 20, with a quiet strength that made her curious. He wasn't cheering or boasting like the others. Instead, he watched the fighters with a scholar's focus. His lips pressed in a thoughtful line. For a moment, their eyes met, and Zahra felt a jolt, like a spark jumping from a fire. She quickly looked away, her cheeks warming under her cap. She couldn't afford distractions. Not now. The tournament began with a blast of horns, and Zahra's nerves turned to fire. She stepped into the ring for her first match, facing a hulking warrior with a scarred face and a mace that looked like it could crush stone. The crowd jeered, seeing her slight frame and assuming she'd fall fast. But Zahra was no stranger to being underestimated. She twirled her spear, her body moving to the rhythm of her homeland's drums, a beat only she could hear. The warrior charged, roaring, but Zahra danced aside, her spear flashing like a snake's tongue. She struck his knee, then his arm, moving so fast the crowd gasped. In moments he was on the ground, groaning, and Zahra stood tall, her chest heaving, her eyes blazing. The crowd erupted, half in shock, half in awe. Zahra felt their stares like a weight, but also like wings lifting her up. She'd done it. She'd proven she could stand with the best. Across the field, Prince Li Wei's gaze lingered on her. His expression unreadable but intense. Did he suspect her secret? Did he see through her disguise? Zahra's heart thudded, not just from the fight, but from the sudden fear and thrill that she'd caught the prince's eye. As the sun dipped low, painting the sky in hues of fire and gold, Zahra walked back to the inn, her spear heavy on her shoulder but her spirit light. She'd survived the first day, but the tournament wasn't over. More fights awaited, and with them, more chances to prove herself, or to be discovered. She thought of Prince Li Wei, his quiet gaze, and the stories she'd heard of his kindness, his courage, his burden as the emperor's son. Something in her stirred, a mix of fear and hope. This city, this tournament, this prince, they were all part of a path she hadn't expected. And Zahra, the girl from the Swahili coast, was ready to walk it, no matter where it led. The next day, she was to face him again. And she wasn't going to back out. Not now. The roar of the crowd hit Zahra like a tidal wave, crashing over her as she stepped into the tournament ring. Her spear gripped tight in her sweaty hands. Her heart thumped so loud she thought it might burst, but she stood tall, her chin high, her eyes blazing. She was Zaria now, a boy from a far-off land, not Zahra, the Swahili girl who'd crossed deserts and seas to reach Chongan. The sun burned hot above the tournament grounds, turning the dirt under her sandals to dust that stung her eyes. All around, the air buzzed with shouts, laughter, and the clash of metal. Warriors flexed their muscles, their armor shining like fish scales, while nobles in silk robes fanned themselves and whispered bets. Zahra felt like a sparrow among hawks, small but fierce, ready to soar. She'd made it through the first day of the Emperor's tournament, her spear dancing skills surprising everyone. Back home, on the golden beaches of her coastal village, she'd twirled her spear to the beat of drums, her body moving like the waves her mother loved. "You're a storm, Zahra," her mother used to say, her smile warm as the sun. That memory was a fire in Zahra's chest now, pushing her forward. She wasn't just fighting for herself, she was fighting for her mother, gone too soon, for her father who believed in her, and for every girl who'd been told to stay quiet, to stay small. Today, she'd face her toughest challenge yet. A general named Gao, a mountain of a man with a laugh like thunder and a sword that could split stone. Zahra adjusted her cap, tucking her braids tighter. Her disguise as Zari had held so far, but every step felt like walking on a knife's edge. One slip, one wrong move, and the truth would spill out. She wasn't a boy, but a girl daring to break the rules. The crowd's eyes bored into her, some curious, some mocking. "Look at that skinny kid," a man snorted, pointing at her. "He'll be dust under Gao's boots." Zahra's stomach twisted, but she pushed the fear down. She'd faced worse. Bandits on the Silk Road, storms at sea, the ache of missing home. She wouldn't let their laughter stop her. Across the field, she caught sight of Prince Li Wei, standing under a red silk canopy. Her breath hitched. He was like a figure from a dream, his jade-green robe shimmering in the sunlight, his dark hair tied back with a silver cord. He was younger than she'd thought, maybe 20, with a face calm as a still lake but eyes sharp as a hawk's. He wasn't cheering or joking like the other nobles. Instead, he watched the fighters with a quiet intensity, his hands clasped behind his back. Yesterday, their eyes had met for a fleeting moment, and Zahra had felt a spark, like a star falling in her heart. Did he see her? Really see her? She shook her head, focusing. She couldn't afford to think about princes. Not now. The horns blared, signaling her match. General Gao strode into the ring, his armor clanking, his sword gleaming like a dragon's tooth. He was huge, his shoulders wide as a bull's, his grin cruel. "Little boy," he boomed, his voice shaking the air. "Go home before I break you." The crowd roared with laughter, but Zahra's lips twitched into a defiant smile. She twirled her spear, the wood warm and familiar in her hands, and let her body find the rhythm of her homeland. A beat of drums, of waves, of her mother's voice singing in the night. She was ready. The fight began with a clash that rattled her bones. Gao swung his sword, fast and heavy, aiming to crush her. But Zahra was wind, dancing out of reach, her sandals skimming the dirt. She spun, her spear flashing like lightning, striking Gao's armored arm. The crowd gasped. Gao snarled, swinging again, but Zahra ducked, her body bending like a reed in a storm. She struck again, her spear tip grazing his knee, then his side, each hit precise, each move a dance. Her heart pounded, not with fear now, but with joy. This was who she was. A warrior, a storm, a girl who could make the world stop and stare. The crowd's laughter turned to cheers, their voices rising like a wave. Zahra felt their energy lift her, her movements growing bolder. But then disaster. As she spun, her cap caught on the edge of her spear, slipping just enough to let a braid tumble free. Her heart froze. The crowd didn't notice, too caught in the fight, but across the ring, Gao's eyes narrowed. "What's this?" he growled, lunging forward. Zahra dodged, panic clawing at her chest. She yanked the cap back, but not before she felt another pair of eyes on her. Prince Li Wei's. From his canopy, he leaned forward, his gaze piercing. Did he see? Did he know? Gao's sword came down like a falling star, and Zahra barely rolled out of the way, dirt smearing her face. She couldn't think about the prince now. She had to win. Gathering her strength, she remembered her brother's words. Strike where they're weak, Zahra. Be the storm they don't see coming. She faked a stumble, luring Gao closer. When he swung, overconfident, she spun low, her spear sweeping his legs from under him. He crashed to the ground, his sword flying, his roar cut short. The crowd exploded, screaming, clapping, stomping. Zahra stood over him, panting, her spear pointed at his chest. "Yield," she said, her voice low but steady. Gao glared, his face red with rage, but he nodded. The match was hers. The crowd chanted, "Zari! Zari!" And Zahra's heart soared, but fear lingered. Her braid had been seen. She adjusted her cap, her hands shaking, and glanced at Prince Li Wei. He was clapping, slow and deliberate. His eyes locked on hers. Her stomach flipped. He knew something, she was sure of it. But instead of calling her out, he turned to an official and murmured something. His face unreadable. As the crowd thinned, an imperial guard approached Zahra, his armor gleaming. "Zari, the prince requests your presence at the palace," he said. His voice gruff but respectful. Zahra's mouth went dry. The palace. Her mind raced. Had Li Wei seen through her disguise? Was this a trap? Or was it something else? Her heart whispered of the spark she'd felt, the way his eyes seemed to see more than her spear, more than her lies. She nodded, swallowing hard. "I'll come," she said, her voice steady despite the storm inside her. The walk to the palace felt like a dream. Chongan streets glowed in the evening light, lanterns swaying like fireflies, the air thick with the scent of jasmine and roasted meat. Zahra's legs felt heavy, her spear heavier, but she kept her head high. She was still Zari, still a warrior, even if her secret teetered on the edge of discovery. The palace loomed ahead, its red walls and golden roofs like something from a tale her mother used to tell. Guards led her through gates, past gardens where peonies bloomed like bursts of fire, to a hall where Prince Li Wei waited. He stood alone, his robe catching the lantern light. His face calm but his eyes alive with curiosity. "Zari," he said. His voice soft but firm, like a breeze that could turn into a gale. "Your fighting is different. Like nothing I've seen." He stepped closer and Zahra's heart raced. Up close, he was even more striking. His features sharp yet kind, his gaze searching. "Where did you learn to fight like that?" he asked, tilting his head. Zahra's throat tightened. She wanted to tell him everything. About her village, her mother, the drums that lived in her blood. But she couldn't. Not yet. "Far away," she said, keeping her voice low, her eyes on the floor. "A place of sun and sea." Li Wei nodded, as if he heard more in her words than she said. "You're welcome here, Zari," he said, a small smile tugging at his lips. "Stay as my guest. I want to know more about you." Zahra's heart leaped, torn between fear and something warmer, something dangerous. She nodded, unable to speak. As she followed a servant to a guest chamber, her mind spun. The prince's kindness was a puzzle. Was he testing her, or did he truly see her worth? Alone in the chamber, she sank to the floor, her spear beside her, and let out a shaky breath. She was in the heart of the Tang Palace, a girl pretending to be a boy, caught in a game bigger than she'd ever imagined. And Prince Li Wei, with his quiet strength and searching eyes, was a mystery she wasn't sure she could resist.